Nvidia and AMD both have seen some great month with AMD up nearly 23% and as we saw Nvidia up nearly 18%. Now I keep getting the same question, Jose, would I be buying any of these stocks at these levels? Well, let's take a closer look in today's episode. Now, in the past few days, we've actually seen a lot and a lot of great excitements for both these players, right? For example, about a day ago, we did see that Mark Zuckerberg is planning on building a lot of AI data centers, and most of those data centers are going to be powered by Nvidia. But Meta Platforms does have a nice partnership with AMD that I do believe some of that money can also trickle down to AMD as well. So just that Meta Platform AI investments is very bullish for the AI market. Very similar, I want to say, if Meta Platforms and Mark Zuckerberg are spending billions and hundreds of billions of dollars more in the AI market, other companies are going to follow suit. No one wants to be left behind in this AI space and in this AI race. And if you see Meta investing more, I think we're going to see the same from other cloud service providers as well. Now, the second news that really drove some attention to the overall stocks, both for AMD and Nvidia, is that both these players are able to get approval of a license to send their AI chip to China. This AI chip is kind of a watered down version of their main chip. For NVIDIA, it's known as the H20. For AMD, it's known as the MI308. Now, again, this is we're going to look throughout this episode different financial numbers, but this is a big market opportunity for them. For both these companies, it's billions and billions of dollars of revenue that they can recover again, and this is going to help these companies beat expectations that analysts have provided. I do believe this is one of the main reasons. Just today, the stocks were up, and AMD was up roughly 6.4%, and Nvidia was up roughly 4%, which is crazy for a $4 trillion company. Now, what I first want to do is go to fiscal.ai, and this is what I would consider the best platform if you are serious about investing. If you want to have a platform that does everything for you, for getting transcripts, getting slides, getting reports, getting financial numbers, getting pretty cool charting, having AI summaries, having forward PE ratios, all these types of modeling, fiscal.ai is the place. And you can get a great offer using fiscal.ai/Jose. 15% off any plan, and you also get 2 weeks free. Definitely check it out. This is going to be the last time I plug it in today's episode, but I personally use it on a daily basis and it speeds up my process. So right now I am looking at AMD's quarter one transcript, right? So in quarter one transcript, I actually asked the AI, what was the impact of the China export restrictions? And it told me that AMD estimates $700 million in revenue reduction in the second quarter of 2025 and approximately $1.5 billion for the full year. So in total, this kind of export restrictions that is now gone, not necessarily gone, there are getting approved by licenses, is about a $1.5 to $2 billion yearly revenue for AMD. Now, this is it seems like a small amount, but AMD is not at the same levels as Nvidia. In forms of revenue consensus of what AMD is expected to do this year, it's around $32 billion. So about let's say $2 to $3 billion coming in from AI chip sales. That's about a 10% growth added to what the market is expecting, right? So it's definitely a very bullish sentiment. Now, if you follow for NVIDIA, on the other hand, has we look at the same thing. NVIDIA believed that for quarter two alone, the Chinese market export restrictions estimated an $8 billion loss in revenue. So kind of do that for a full year basis is closer to $32 billion in overall revenue that is lost per year. And now if we look at kind of the analyst expectations for this year, consensus were about $200 billion. So an extra $32 billion is closer to 10 or 15% growth that they can beat over expectations. So AMD and Nvidia going up on the Chinese news is very crucial because for both of them, it can be a reason why they beat double-digit percentage points on expectations that we see now. Now, what we're going to most likely see in the upcoming days is more analysts increase price targets and more analysts increase the revenue potentials for both these players as now this market is in full swing. But I do believe it is right to see these price increases for this company. Now, I talked about it I kind of the main point in this episode is, would I be buying at these levels? And I'll explain a little bit more in a bit, but just so I don't leave you hanging, the answer is going to be no. At these levels, for me, it's more of a hold position. Here, I do believe that both AMD and Nvidia have various growth opportunities from different industries, from just the AI market itself evolving and continuing to grow, right? I mean, we just talked about that Meta built up data centers growing bazooka crazy, right? Extremely crazy. It's going nuts. And I do expect this to go in with the other big tech players. Now, so for that reason, I'm not selling, right? Because I do believe there's a lot of growth potential for Nvidia and AMD. I believe there's plenty of growth potential. I'm not selling any of my positions just yet. And you might be wondering, Jose, if you're not selling because you believe there's so much bullish sentiments after that, why wouldn't you just buy at these levels? And the answer is pretty easy. It's all about my risk to reward ratio, my reward to risk ratio, depending on how you like to look at it. But I just don't think it's in my favor. I think the market, the semiconductor space, if we look at it in just the past 5 years for Nvidia, there are various opportunities to get in the stock at cheaper price. And for someone like me who has a nice position in both these companies, I would rather wait for those opportunities. I mean, here, for example, we've seen these various dips for AMD. We also see them for Nvidia, things like DeepSeek, things like slowdown in AI capex, things like tariffs, and those are just ones that I've talked that we've seen in the past 2 years. I believe volatility will continue. So for someone like me that has a nice position in both these companies already, this is more of a hold phase. So I'm putting a hold rating, in my opinion, for Nvidia and AMD at these levels. Again, this is not saying that the stock is not going to go higher. I'm not selling it right now. I'd rather just have my stocks and my position ride this AI wave and wait for better opportunities before I buy again. Now you might be wondering, Jose, but what about me? I have no positions in AMD or Nvidia. How would I do with this hold rating? Now let's say I didn't have a position in any of these two companies. How would I handle it? I think if I had no position and wanted to get exposure, to me the easiest way to do it would be to buy this semiconductor ETF, SMH. And actually, let's just go here to fiscal.ai. Let me just put SMH. Let's look for ETFs and index. And it kind of gives you a breakdown of the semiconductor industry. And we can see Nvidia is about 21% of this company's of this ETF's holding. Broadcom is about 15%. AMD is about 5.6%. So SMH would be one way I personally would like to do it if I wanted to kind of get exposure into the semiconductor company. And right now, where I believe maybe valuations are a little bit skittish or high, I would rather go through a semiconductor play. Another one that's also very popular, and maybe it all depends on how you feel with what type of holdings are there, is SOXX. So XOXX is maybe a little bit more diversified. We can see that the previous one was more exposed to Nvidia. This one, for example, has 8.8% in AMD, 8.1% in Nvidia, 7.5% in Broadcom, 6.8% in Texas Instrument. The list goes on and on. Right, this one seems to be a little bit better broken down in how to instead of just focusing in one play. Nvidia SMHX is pretty much an Nvidia ETF, but I don't mind that sometimes. But regardless, if you were to say, Jose, how would you enter the semiconductor market, especially the AI accelerator via your AMD or Nvidia? It would either be through an ETF, like I mentioned right here, or if I really just wanted the individual holdings, it would just be through very small dollar cost averaging, very small. Even maybe do a little bit of all three, right? A little bit of AMD, a little bit of Nvidia, and a little bit of SMH or whatever ETF you go. So like that, you kind of get this exposure of kind of this global supply chain. That's how I would do it. But at the moment, I personally would not be buying bulks of any of these companies. Again, I'm not saying stocks are going to go lower. That's why I keep holding my stocks. I believe this AI revolution is just starting, but there are going to be better opportunities for the patient investor. And I want to take a closer look at valuations, right? I want to look at forward PE ratio, which is the end of this fiscal year. So about 6 months left for this fiscal year. Obviously, consensus are going to increase a little bit at these, as all these are analyst expectations. And as we are getting kind of that China deal and China news, earnings per share should actually be a lot higher for both AMD and Nvidia. But regardless, I want to see where we're sitting right now. So for consensus of December of 2025, analysts expect AMD will do roughly $3.90 in earnings per share. So if we do that $1.55, 155 on their shares, current share price, and divide it by the three, let's give it an extra penny, $3.90. That's a forward PE ratio of about 39.7. I think that's actually pretty steep. I really do. I would have preferred it to be maybe closer to the low 30s. That would be something I'm gonna be a little bit more excited. But at these high 39s, closer to 40s, I still like what I'm saying, that I would rather do more of a low cost average basis, or kind of focus on an ETF itself. Now, if we look at a Nvidia is pretty much in the similar ballpoint, kind of breakpoint here. So for Nvidia, the market's expecting around $4.30. Again, I do believe it will be higher because of this China news, but not something that would completely break this earnings per share number. So 170 right now divided by $4.30, that's closer to 39 as well. I think with the overall market sentiment, with the earnings per share given throughout these China news, these can go to at least maybe 36, 37, but they're still feeling a little bit rich for my taste. So for my overall investment style, I would not buy at these levels. Again, that doesn't mean the stock price is going to go down. That doesn't mean that I'm selling my shares. I'm still very bullish. But when I put money to work in my portfolio, the first thing I want to do is the probability of this money being very strong in the next few years very high, or can I get an opportunity where my probability is even higher than it is right now? And I do believe that the market gives optionality. So those are my thoughts. Again, hopefully, I would love to hear from you, the viewers. Are you personally thinking that AMD or Nvidia, if you can put them in either three baskets, if either buy, hold, or sell, and hold doesn't mean you're bearish. It just means you wouldn't do anything with your stocks right now and just kind of be patient with it. Which would you pick right now? Would you do buy Nvidia, buy, hold, sell Nvidia? And what would you do for AMD as well? So take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.